Hi guys, this is Jin Choi from Group 9A. So in the previous video, you learned about homeostasis. In this video, we will discuss homeostasis in the cellular level. But before we begin, let's define what a cell is. So what is a cell? A cell is the smallest unit of life. What that means is that every living organism is made up of one or more cells. So, what does this all mean? It means that cells are considered the simplest basic unit of life because they are able to separate itself from the environment by making a stable internal environment to maintain structures to allow the reactions to occur properly. Cells are able to maintain an internal environment because all cells are surrounded by a structure called the cell membrane, which is like the walls of your house, which serves as a clear boundary between the cell's internal and external environments. All cells can be divided into two groups. The first group is the prokaryotes, and the second group are eukaryotes. So eukaryotes are cells that contain a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms that lack a membrane-bound nucleus and also mitochondria and any other membrane-bound organelle. But it is important to note that there are similarities between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes. For instance, they both have ribosomes and cell membrane. An important point here to remember is that eukaryotes and prokaryotes both have cell membranes. What that means is all cells have cell membranes, also known as plasma membrane. But before we go any further, let's think back to what we learned about homeostasis in the previous video. Homeostasis is defined as a maintenance of static or constant conditions in the internal environment. An easy way to think about homeostasis in the cell is to relate it to an idea used in engineering called a black box model. A black box is a device, system, or object which can be viewed in terms of its inputs and outputs without any knowledge of its internal workings. So here is a cell. Let's use the black box model in an example of how the cell membrane regulates the sodium and potassium ions. So the cell is like the black box. There is an input being put in and an output that comes out. A membrane potential is achieved in the cell mainly by sodium-potassium pump. A complex of protons embedded in the membrane derives energy from ATP in order to transport sodium and potassium ions across the membrane. On each cycle, the pump exchanges 2 potassium ions from the extracellular space for 3 sodium ions from the intracellular space. The membrane works as a diffusion barrier to the movement of ions. Ion transporter pump proteins actively push ions across the membrane and establish concentration gradients across the membrane. And ion channels allow ions to move across the membrane down those concentration gradients. Ion pumps are integral membrane proteins that carry out active transport. As in the example previously shown, the cell uses energy, ATP, to pump the ions against their concentration gradients. Such ion pumps take in ions from one side of the membrane and release them on the other side. This is important in keeping the electrochemical gradient of the cell. So, to sum everything up, cells are able to maintain steady state values within itself through compartmentalizations. The cell distinguishes its internal self from the external environment. An input into the cell may change, but the cell maintains homeostasis. Thanks for watching, and hopefully this video helped you understand cellular homeostasis a little better.